I woke up smiling. That alone was unusual. For months, work had been exhausting. Late nights, impossible deadlines, weekend emails, constant pressure. But today was different. Today was my 25th birthday. I wasn't expecting a huge celebration. Just a peaceful day. Maybe coffee with my coworkers, maybe dinner with my mom afterward. Simple things. Those were always my favorite. I looked at my phone. 7 birthday messages, 3 from college friends, 2 from my cousins, 1 from mom, and 1 from my younger brother. No message from anyone at work. I laughed quietly. They're probably planning something. At least, that's what I told myself. I worked as a senior data analyst at Brighton Dynamics, a growing technology company. I'd been there almost 3 years. During those 3 years, I missed birthdays, canceled vacations, skipped family gatherings, even worked through COVID while recovering from a fever. Because I believed hard work always paid off. Maybe the first was naive, maybe the first simply trusted the wrong people. Our department manager was Richard Collins, 40 to 8 years old. Sharp suits, expensive watches, perfect smile. Everyone thought he was inspiring until they worked directly under him. Then they discovered the truth. Richard loved results, not people. If you succeeded, he took the credit. If you failed, he made sure everyone knew your name. Still, I survived. Because I wasn't there to make friends. I wanted experience. I wanted to build a future. One promotion. One project. One opportunity at a time. By 8:15 that morning, I walked into the office carrying a small box of donuts. It wasn't expensive. Just something I thought everyone could enjoy. As soon as I entered, I noticed something strange. The office was unusually quiet. People looked at me, then quickly looked away. No smiles, no birthday wishes. Nothing. Even Sarah, the receptionist who remembered everyone's birthday, avoided eye contact. My stomach tightened. Something felt wrong. I walked to my desk. There was no birthday card, no balloons, no sticky notes, nothing. Just a calendar reminder blinking on my monitor. Project Phoenix meeting, 9 a.m., Project Phoenix. The biggest contract our department had ever handled. The project I'd spent nearly 8 months building. The project that had become my life. Without me, it didn't exist. Or at least, that's what I believed. Around 8:40, my coworker Daniel slowly walked over. He looked nervous. Happy birthday. His smile felt forced. Thanks. You okay? He hesitated. Yeah. Then he leaned closer. If Richard asks you into his office, don't panic. My heart stopped. What? He immediately shook his head. Forget I said anything. Then he walked away. Suddenly, nothing about this day felt normal. I opened my laptop. 23 unread emails, most of them routine. Until one caught my attention. Mandatory executive meeting. Emma Carter, 9 a.m. executive meeting. Why would HR be there? Why was finance copied? Why was legal included? Something wasn't right. At exactly 9, Richard stepped out of his office. He looked directly at me. Emma, my office. No smile. No birthday acknowledgement. Nothing. Every conversation around the office stopped. I could actually feel people watching me. Inside the office, 3 people were waiting. Richard, Melissa from HR, and someone from legal I'd never met before. Richard folded his hands. Please sit. Nobody smiled. Nobody offered coffee. Nobody even looked comfortable. Melissa finally spoke. Emma, thank you for your contribution over the past 3 years. The room suddenly felt cold. No, this couldn't be happening. Not today. Not like this. Richard slid a folder across the desk. We've decided to eliminate your position. I stared at him. I'm sorry. What? He didn't blink. It's a business decision. My ears started ringing. I couldn't hear anything else. Months of overtime. Hundreds of late nights. Thousands of hours gone. In one sentence. I looked at Richard. What about Project Phoenix? He smiled. We'll manage. Manage. Without the person who built every model, every forecast, every client presentation? I almost laughed. Instead, I stayed silent. Melissa explained the severance package, health insurance, final paycheck, company property. Words kept coming, but they sounded distant, like I was underwater. Then Richard said something that broke me. I know it's your birthday, but business doesn't wait. I felt something inside me crack. Not because I lost my job, because he knew. He knew exactly what today meant, and he chose today anyway. I stood up slowly, closed the folder, looked Richard directly in the eyes, and calmly asked one question. Was this your decision? He answered immediately. Yes. No hesitation, no guilt, nothing. I nodded. Thank you. That confused him. He expected tears, begging, anger. Instead, I simply walked out. The entire office was silent. Nobody spoke, nobody moved. I picked up my family photo, my notebook, a coffee mug my mom had given me on my first day, and the untouched box of birthday donuts. As I reached the elevator, Sarah finally whispered, I'm so sorry, Emma. I smiled. It's okay. But it wasn't. Not even close. Outside, the rain had started. I sat in my car, staring at the steering wheel, 25 years old, jobless, on my birthday. I cried harder than I ever had before. Not because I thought my career was over, because I couldn't understand how someone could be so cruel. After almost an hour, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It contained only one sentence. Richard made the biggest mistake of his career. Don't answer any calls from the office today. No name, no explanation, nothing. I read it 5 times, then looked at the number again. Who sent it? And more importantly, how did they know what was about to happen? I had no idea, but before the next sunrise, my former boss would call me over 20 times, desperately asking for the very help he believed he no longer needed. He barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Richard's face, his cold smile, his empty apology, and the words that kept echoing in my mind, business doesn't wait. Neither did reality. At exactly 6:17 the next morning, my phone started vibrating. Unknown number. I ignored it. 30 seconds later, it rang again. Unknown number, again and again. By the time I finally picked up my phone, there were 23 missed calls. Every single one from Brighton Dynamics. Then another call came in. This time, it was Daniel. I answered. Before I could even say hello, he shouted, Emma, don't hang up. Something in his voice made my heart race. What happened? There was complete silence for a few seconds. Then he whispered, Project Phoenix crashed. I frowned. What do you mean? The client presentation started at 8. Nothing worked. The financial model failed. The dashboard wouldn't open. The executives are panicking. I sat upright. That system couldn't simply fail. I had tested it hundreds of times. Unless someone had tried to use an unfinished version. Then Daniel said something even stranger. Richard keeps asking where you stored the master file. I closed my eyes. Because I knew exactly what had happened. Richard never listened. For months I had warned everyone. The presentation version is not the master version. The master model requires a secure authorization key. Only 2 people had that key, me and the chief technology officer. Richard refused to involve the CTO. He believed he knew everything. Now, his confidence had turned into chaos. Around 9 o'clock, my phone rang again. Richard. I watched it ring until it stopped. 1 minute later, another call. Then another, then a message. Emma, this is urgent. No good morning, no apology, no birthday wish, just urgent. I didn't reply. A few minutes later, Melissa from HR called. Her voice sounded completely different from yesterday. Emma, could we please talk? I remained calm. I'm listening. She hesitated. There seems to have been a misunderstanding. I almost laughed. Yesterday they had eliminated my position. Today it was a misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding? The executive team would like to meet with you, today. I asked only one question. Am I still fired? Silence. Finally, technically, yes. Then I don't think we have anything to discuss. And I ended the call. Just after noon, an unexpected visitor knocked on my apartment door. It wasn't Richard, it wasn't HR, it was Mr. Howard Bennett, the company's chief technology officer. The man I had met only a handful of times. He smiled politely. May I come in? We sat at my kitchen table. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he looked directly at me. I owe you an apology. I was surprised. For what? I should have stopped yesterday's decision. Those words caught me off guard. Mr. Bennett sighed. Richard convinced the board that Project Phoenix was finished. But I knew it wasn't. You repeatedly warned us that only you understood the final integration. I nodded slowly. I sent 3 reports. I know. I read them. Too late. He placed a folder on the table. Inside were screenshots of dozens of failed system alerts. Every one of them traced back to the same mistake. Someone had bypassed the security process. Someone had forced the unfinished system to go live. And that someone was Richard. That afternoon, Richard finally stopped calling. Instead, he sent one email. Subject, please help us. I opened it. It read, Emma, I made a serious mistake. The client has suspended the contract. If we cannot recover the system before tomorrow morning, the company could lose millions. I know I treated you unfairly. Please meet with me. Name your price. Richard Collins. I stared at the screen. Yesterday. He said business didn't wait. Today, business was begging. I looked out the window. For the first time since losing my job, I didn't feel angry. I felt powerful. Not because Richard had failed, but because I finally understood something. My value had never depended on my job title. It depended on the knowledge, dedication, and integrity that no one could take away. I closed my laptop, smiled quietly, and whispered to myself, if you want my help now, this time we're doing things my way. But I had no idea. The meeting scheduled for the next morning would reveal a secret that Richard had been hiding from the entire company, and when the board discovered the truth, his career would never be the same again. The next morning I walked into Brighton Dynamics for the first time since I had been fired. Nothing looked different. The same lobby, the same glass walls, the same employees. But the way they looked at me had changed. Yesterday, I had walked out carrying a cardboard box. Today, every executive in the building was waiting for me. As I entered the conference room, Richard stood up immediately. He looked exhausted. His expensive suit was wrinkled. Dark circles surrounded his eyes. For the first time since I had met him, he looked afraid. Emma. Thank you for coming. I nodded politely but didn't sit down. Instead, I looked around the room. The CEO, the CTO, Mr. Bennett, 2 board members, the HR director, and Richard. The CEO finally spoke. Emma, we've reviewed everything that happened. We owe you an apology, I replied calmly. I appreciate that. But before we discuss the project, I'd like to understand why I was fired. The room became silent. Everyone looked at Richard. He cleared his throat. It was a restructuring decision. Mr. Bennett interrupted him. No, it wasn't. He placed several printed emails on the table. I've spent the last 12 hours reviewing internal communications. The board never approved eliminating Emma's position. I looked at Richard. His face had turned pale. Mr. Bennett continued. Richard recommended the dismissal without informing senior leadership, and he claimed Project Phoenix no longer required Emma's involvement. The CEO slowly turned toward Richard. Is that true? Richard couldn't answer. Because it was. The investigation didn't stop there. The company's IT department had recovered deleted emails. One message changed everything. Richard had written to another manager. Once Emma is gone, no one will know how much of this project actually depended on her. We'll take full credit after launch. The room fell silent. It wasn't just a bad decision. It was deliberate. He hadn't fired me because I performed poorly. He fired me because my success threatened his own. For months I had solved impossible problems, built the system, saved deadlines, protected clients. And instead of recognizing my work, he tried to erase my name from it. The CEO looked directly at me. Emma, you deserved far better. I didn't say anything. Some apologies are genuine. Some arrive too late. This one was somewhere in between. The CEO slid a folder across the table. We'd like you to return. Immediately, I opened the folder. A promotion, a significant salary increase, a leadership position, and a written apology from the company. A year earlier, I would have accepted without hesitation, but I wasn't the same person anymore. I closed the folder gently. I appreciate the offer. Everyone waited. But I have one condition, the CEO nodded. Name it. I won't work under Richard. Mr. Bennett answered before anyone else could. You won't have to. He turned toward Richard. Effective immediately. You are relieved of your management responsibilities while the board completes its investigation. Richard lowered his head. For the first time, He had no speech prepared, no excuses, no authority, only consequences. I accepted the company's offer, not because I needed revenge, because I had earned the opportunity. Over the following months, Project Phoenix became the company's most successful product launch. The client renewed their contract. The executive team created new policies to protect employees from unfair dismissals. Performance reviews became transparent. Major staffing decisions required board approval. The culture slowly began to change. One afternoon, Mr. Bennett stopped by my office. "You know, your work didn't just save a project, it changed this company." I smiled. "I only did my job," he smiled back. "Exactly." Chapter 10. One final conversation. Several months later, I was leaving the office when someone called my name. "Emma." I turned around. Richard. He looked different, calmer, humbler. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say, I was wrong. I spent years believing leadership meant taking credit. You taught me that real leadership is earning trust." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said, "I hope you remember that wherever life takes you next." That was all. Some stories don't end with revenge. They end with growth. Epilogue. On my 26th birthday, the same coworkers who had watched me leave with a cardboard box gathered around my desk. There were balloons, cake, a handwritten card signed by the entire department, and one small gift. Inside was a coffee mug. It read, "Never underestimate your worth." I laughed. Then I cried. Not because of the gift, because 1 year earlier, I thought losing my job had ended my future. In reality, it was the day my real future began. Moral of the story: sometimes rejection isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's the moment that reveals your true value. People may ignore your effort, take credit for your work, or underestimate your talent, but integrity, skill, and perseverance have a way of speaking for themselves. The greatest victory isn't making someone regret losing you. It's building a life where their opinion no longer defines your worth. The end.